Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and we're talking about drunk driving. The law in Wisconsin recently got tougher, and a few more resources have been offered to the courts and the police in enforcing the law. But of course, there are downsides to that. First of all, is it going to work? And secondly, is it going to put more people in prison so that you and I, the taxpayers, can pay for them and pay for their families when they can't be out supporting them? There are all kinds of sides to that. And my friends that are in the tavern and restaurant business say that the legislature just put the final nail in their coffin. It was tough enough before to get people to go out and have a nice evening meal with a bottle or two of wine and enjoy the meal and the family and spend a little money when they were afraid to get on the highway because they might be over, what is it, 0.08? Well, let's talk to somebody who's really out there on the streets and highways, and he sees it from another point of view. He's an officer. He's a candidate for sheriff. He's had a lot of experience, and his name is John Matz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience out on the highway. You see another end of this question, don't you?
We certainly do. Our law enforcement officers with the Sheriff's Office and other agencies see the carnage that's caused by drunk drivers and crashes and the long-lasting effects of those crashes and injuries and deaths. We accompany the coroner to moms and dads' homes and inform them that their son or daughter has just been killed in a car crash, or their son or daughter has been involved in a car crash and appears to be intoxicated and will be charged with homicide by intoxicated use of a motor vehicle.
And I think it would be fair to say that when you see these people who are arrested for drunk driving while intoxicated, and then you get to see them a little later in the court, when they're not drunk, they're just like you and me. They are absolutely good people. Most of them are hardworking, employed family people. But when the man takes the drink takes the man, and you see the other end of it.
Certainly do, and they are good people. They're just like you and I. They have a few beers in an evening, and they overindulge. They think they're okay to drive, and things happen so quickly when you're operating a vehicle at 55, 65 miles an hour or more. And they just make an error, but it costs them many times their own life, somebody else's life, and financially, and prison time, and all the things that go with the decision they just made.
You've probably had experiences observing how someone's judgment and reflexes are affected by just a few drinks.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much alcohol to change somebody's reaction time. It depends upon body weight. It depends upon whether or not they are an avid drinker or if they're just a social drinker, which many times social drinkers get caught up in the drunk driving law because they don't have a lot of experience drinking. It may just be every other Friday night when they go out for a fish fry. And that can be the person that's involved in that fatal car crash. And it's just that point in time where they make that error and it costs them dearly.
And it's no defense to be a good Samaritan, to say, well, Floyd, I think you've had too much to drink. I've had less to drink than you. Want me to drive? But yet I might be over the limit, and I might not be able to handle it quite like I could have had I not been drinking. And I get pulled off by Captain Matz. What do I expect? The red light's going, I pull off, I say some things I can't say on television. What happens next?
Well, the officer will make contact with the operator of the vehicle. He'll look for signs of intoxication from the driver, whether it's the odor of intoxicants coming from that driver. They'll look for the person to fumble for their driver's license, slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, those types of indications. If the officer sees those things, he'll ask the person to perform field sobriety tests. And that's checking balance, that's checking the person's ability to do more than one action at one time. And if the officer receives enough clues from those field sobriety tests, that individual will be arrested for operating while under the influence.
And that individual will be cuffed having had recent shoulder surgery, I wouldn't look forward to that, and taken someplace for some more testing.
That's right. If it is for the sheriff's office, if it's first offense, we use a breath test. If it's second and subsequent offense, then we take them to the hospital for a blood test. So they will be tested in some way, shape, or form, either breath or blood. And depending upon what it is, it'll determine where it's at.
And then you've got the problem or the expense of who's going to pick up your car, where that's going to be, contacting your family and explaining to the good woman that you're in a bit of trouble, and listening to some advice, unsolicited. And after that on, it gets worse, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That person will more than likely have their vehicle towed, because we just can't wait to have somebody pick up the vehicle. And that vehicle will be towed to one of our local wrecker places. And then we will transport the individual more than likely to our jail, and they'll be picked up by a responsible party. And if they can't, then they'll spend time in our jail until a responsible, sober adult can come pick them up. And the financial repercussions of fines and forfeitures and possible jail time, depending upon the number of offense, can be much more than what that individual bargained for when they got in that vehicle to drive.
And in the meantime, the car has been searched for evidence of intoxicants. Very often some medicines that shouldn't be there come up, and some other information. This can lead to additional charges. The individual who's been arrested is encouraged to fill out a report, answer questions. Those questions can be used against them. The preparation for the trial is taking place, and if they're not shocked and humiliated when they call a lawyer and find out what the retainer is, that'll sober them up. It starts getting expensive, doesn't it?
It certainly does. An OWI trial for a defendant can be extremely expensive, depending upon the attorney that's hired. And I believe the success rate is not that great for the defense attorneys or the defendants.
No, it isn't, because the test is pretty solid. It's accepted by the courts. About the only way I know of dealing with the test, and I'll admit it's been a few years since I used to prosecute these cases, is to hire an expert to try to show that the blood alcohol at the time of the driving was not perhaps as high as it was at the time of the test. But juries are very skeptical. They're not very sympathetic about the drunk driver, nor should they be. And so it's a big impact on the family. The victims of the accident and the family of the person who was charged are also victims. And now, of course, the penalties are getting steeper, so it's just going to get more expensive.
Yes, it is. It will continue to get more expensive, and the law enforcement as a whole is in favor of anything that we can do to reduce the drunk drivers on our roadway. Again, the carnage that's caused by a crash and the long-lasting effects is not worth that person not getting a ride home or a taxi ride.
Great goal. We have 1 minute left in this segment. Is it going to stop people or even reduce the number of people who drink and drive?
I don't believe it will stop drunk driving. Statistically, other states that have enacted similar type laws, it has reduced the number of drunk drivers. So we're hoping that that will happen in this case. We will continue to apply for and receive grants that specifically deal with drunk driving enforcement, and we will be very aggressive in our enforcement of drunk drivers.
It's important work. It saves lives. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.